Hey guys, it's Sean over here with Rainier Arms. We're in the booth with Reptilia, with Eric, and SHOT Show 2024, and we just wanted to take a moment to kind of talk about Reptilia and tell a story, because I personally am a firm believer in, not everyone buys what you do, but they buy what you do it, and I feel like Reptilia is a great example of that. As some of you may know, when you look at the pieces that they bring out and the parts that, it's like, oh, why'd they do that? And it comes down to the fact that there's a reason behind everything. It's not just because. And so again, it's why you're doing it. And that's what I want to get into, is let people know like why you do what you do.
Sure.
Why you became Reptilia yourself after the companies that you've worked for.
Yeah.
And kind of what just did that. So let's first start just you. Tell me a little bit about you and your past.
Sure. Yeah, been in the industry for quite a while. I designed in school early in Denver, Colorado. Was looking for a job outside. When I was leaving that, I was working doing tents and for a company called Mountain Smith, backpacks and poles and whatnot.
Yeah.
It just wasn't really for me. I wasn't about sending out design packets to China and trying to tell them what I want with pictures, and then a couple of weeks later, sample comes back, and they're like, okay, no, now do it this way. And so
yeah.
I was just, this isn't the design world that I want to be living in, right? So, so I happened to have an AR-15 at the time with a Magpul PRS stock on it, and I saw that it was well designed. I liked the aesthetics of it, and a buddy of mine who was way more into guns than I was, I just happened to have a red Glock and a 1 AR. He was like, I think the Magpul is in Colorado somewhere. We should try to see if you can get a job there. And so SHOT Show, we had another buddy. We were in the silencer communities in the early days, and so we had a buddy that had an FFL that got us into SHOT Show.
Nice.
And I approached Magpul and said, hey, I'm a design guy, like your stuff. I'd like to work for you. And they had a lot of that going on at the time, and brushed it off and whatnot. But I was persistent, and eventually they got me some contract work and tested my problem solving skills and whatnot, and then eventually hired me full time and as a designer there. And by the time I left, a couple of years later, I was the lead R&D. I was in charge of R&D, market director of R&D. And so yeah, I worked a lot. I did a lot of products there. When I did leave, my boss at the time handed me the catalog. I forget this was year 2010, I want to say 2011, and he said, "Yeah, here's your CV." And he's like, you've done so much of this, right? So, so yeah, a lot of stuff I did at Magpul in the early days. I was blessed to have a cool company to work for and great leadership. So. Moved on to Advanced Armament Corporation, working with Kevin Brittingham. I'd known him through the silencer communities that we were talking about, the forum boards, because it was before Facebook and all that had groups. And so, he said, "Hey, come work for me. We're selling my company to Remington Defense, and we're going to get a bunch of money, and we're going to be the R&D arm of Remington and Remington Defense." And that sounded exciting, and so that's why I left Magpul and went to AAC. And at that point, 300 Blackout was just becoming a thing. It was a request of the user group to standardize 300 Fireball, 300 Whisper. They would buy systems, and one of the rifles would be great, or they'd test in one rifle would be great. They'd buy 10 of them, and they weren't reliable as a military-grade firearm. They were, Wildcat cartridges. These guys were tight tolerances on their bores and chambers, and they just weren't rugged, and they weren't enduring what a military environment would be, right?
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of flack at the time. 300 Blackout, like, oh, those already exist. And again, they did exist, but they didn't exist in a way that worked for this user group, right? And so we worked on 300 Blackout at that time. At the same time, HK was saying they're going to discontinue the MP5 SD. And so a group was concerned because they use that system for low visibility work.
Yeah.
So they put out a request for a low visibility assault weapon, the LVAW, and we built the Honey Badger to fill that request. And we also were using doing the 300 Blackout thing concurrently, and it was a perfect time for those two to come together, and then Honey Badger existed. And so, yeah, part of the first honey badger system. But then Remington, in their Remington ways, kind of killed the culture of that company and put a lot of roadblocks in our way. They didn't like that we were exciting, cool company, I think, is essentially it. And so we all ended up going our separate ways, and half the company guys went to SIG and did a bunch of stuff there, set up their silencers and whatnot. And then I left and went to Cry Precision because Caleb Cry, owner of the company, wanted to develop a shotgun, breaching shotgun that would go underneath the handguard of a rifle.
Yeah.
He thought it was weird that the breacher would be trying to breach and then run out of the way, and then another guy with a rifle would start shooting in a room, right?
Yeah.
And so his vision was that you could have a separate trigger to be breaching the door, and then be the first guy in the door with that rifle.
The
shotgun revolving, and so the only way to do that would be a revolving shotgun. So that's what ended up being the 612 program that we developed, and then we made it into a standalone system so you could use it as a standalone gun as well.
Mm-hmm.
That went pretty well. It was we got it to the point where it was production ready, and then there wasn't a huge demand for it. There was a lot of people who didn't like the idea of 2 triggers on a gun, for liability's sake, and so retraining, and so it just never really took off. And so I was done living in Brooklyn, New York, because not a city guy.
Colorado to New York. That's
exactly. Literally, I moved from 40 acres outside of Telluride, Colorado, to a 51-story building in Brooklyn, New York. Yeah,
couldn't be more different.
Yeah.
Dang.
I thought I'd hate it, so I just got an air mattress. Expected to leave after a week, but I ended up staying for 4 years and working with.
Wow.
So
did you ever get a bed?
I did get a bed,
okay,
but not for a few months. Not till my girlfriend came.
Oh, yeah. Like, I'm not sleeping on.
Exactly. Yeah. Then I left there and just did some contracting work for them on the side too. And I just wanted to be my own boss and work on things that I was interested in and cared about. And so then founded Reptilia at the end of 2017, and been kind of working project by project ever since. It was never. I always wanted to keep the overhead really low, so I didn't have to make products just to make money to pay a bunch of people who maybe, I was wearing 5 hats at the time. I could handle that because I was a design guy, so I do all the photography work, the graphics work, the design work, the engineering work, the getting it through production, designing packaging. I was doing everything.
Yeah.
I just didn't have, basically the sales. It was the only side that was kind of missing at the time, and so business partner Nick Morris was brought in to do that side of things.
So when you started Reptilia, did you have any products in mind that you wanted to make? I mean, was it kind of like, I want to do this and then I'm going to figure out what I got to do, or did you have something set up? Did you have a game plan?
So what I loved at Magpul was we didn't have to make money on everything at the time, and it was a culture where we had a good interaction with user groups, police department, law enforcement, and commercial market too. But coming to us with a problem that needed to be solved, and that's really what interests me and intrigues me is getting a solution to these guys who are out there, fighting the good fight, right?
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have a certain thing in mind. My background being Reptilia, Reptilia Magpul. Plastics was heavily in my forte, and I expected to probably be doing some plastic stuff, but I didn't want to redo things just for redoing them. Everyone said, "Well, are you gonna do another magazine?" I was like, "I don't want to do another magazine, dude. The PMAG's great. Why would it?"
Yeah.
I kind of took it as some of these groups would come to the company and say, "Hey, I need a thing that exists, that doesn't exist, and here's what we're doing." So like the first product was the ROF 90 for RMR and 30 millimeter diameter, was meant to go on top of a Geisley mount, super precision mount that a group already had the mounts, and they only wanted a couple hundred of these things, and the big guys it wasn't really a thing that was interesting to them, right?
Yeah.
They have these big overheads. They have to make 1,000 of the thing to make it make sense, right?
Yeah.
And so, I designed the ROF 90, built it. They bought it. They loved it. We had a couple extra. We sold it to the commercial market, and we got a lot of heat from people saying, "Oh, I already have a 1 power. Why would I need a red dot on top of a scope? It's a 1 power." And I'm not trying to talk people into what they should do, and make what's right for you work. And so we did sell very slowly, a couple, onesie twosies kind of a thing, except for this one group that loved it. And so then they said, "Oh, not all of our scope mounts are Geisley mounts, so can we have a system that just is a standalone system?" So we took the ROF concept and put a lower ring on it that you can then clamp around the tube, optic tube, and you can add it to any system, any scope mount system. So that was another one, and then it just kept being like, okay, well, if you've done that, what can you do this? And so the dot mounts was another one that they had a situation where they had QD levers on every optic mount has a QD lever. That's a cool guy thing to do, and they had a dog going out on a lead, and its lead got caught on a QD lever and thought it was being told to retreat, and it was really bad. And so they said, no more QD levers. No one's taking these things off in battle. These optics last for 8 years, the battery life, right? And if there was an issue, you deal with it later. And if you did take it off for some reason to clean the gun or whatever, and you put it back on, you would never not confirm your zero, right?
Of course.
Even the best of the best mount, perfect. There's a lot of variables in the world. So, can you do us a red dot mount that has no snags, lightweight, no QD, absolutely no QD, and simple, slimline. So you're not gonna get snagged on things. And so sure, why not? So that's where the original dot mounts came from for the micros, the lower 1/3. And so we take it as these problems come up, we give them a solution that they're looking for.
I think that's like one of the most important things to think about or to understand about Reptilia is you're not ever making anything because it's frilly or it's cool. Like it's just like this flashy cool thing to make. Everything is literally purpose driven.
100%.
It's because these groups of people are coming up to you and saying, hey, this is a problem. It might not be a problem for everybody, but it's a problem to them.
Yeah.
And that's, and it could be a big problem. That's a big problem. If your optic is coming off, especially if you're working with a working dog, that whole situation sounds horrible.
Right.
You can't have those things, right? But in the civilian market and in general consumer, we try to think like, oh yeah, QD mount, that's pretty cool. But we're not thinking about it. It was like, it was what if.
That was a marketing play from back in the day, because it was like, oh, if something goes wrong, you can get it out of the way, and it really, honestly, it was mostly for backup sites, right?
Yeah.
And no one uses backup sites anymore. They realize that if they get to that situation, they're just keep shooting through the tube or whatever, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of indexing aspects that you can learn how to shoot and stuff.
100%.
So,
but then that was another one where we had to like unmarket to the marketed, right? Because it was like, everyone was like, oh, I don't want that. Where's a QD lever? Can I get a QD lever? We've been still to this day. People are like, I love your mount, but I want a QD lever. I'm like, why do you want a QD lever? I'm like, so I can take it off and put it back on. I'm like, you can take this off and put it back on. And it's just. Yeah, and I don't want to be the guy that's trying to go out there and say, my way is the best way. But
sure.
But there is a lot of stuff, just like the ROF 90, where people are like, why would I need a 1 power scope? It's like, look, there's reasons, and maybe you get them, and maybe they work for you, maybe they don't, and that's fun. I'm not buy my stuff if you like it, don't buy it if you don't like it.
Yeah,
that's my ethos. And again, I try to keep the company as low overhead as possible because I want to be able to not worry about keeping product flowing that I know is just done, flashiness, right?
Yeah.
I'd say probably the only exception is we just did OD green anodized AUSs, and
well, it's a great color.
everyone just asked for it, so we made it. But
you got to appeal to the people sometimes, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And it was just a color change. That's all right.
100%. Yeah. It took a while to get the color right though, because it kept coming out like Christmas tree green or too dark. So
just take the FDE route, and it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You just have whatever you want.
Exactly. Well, the someone was asking about the clear anodized stuff on the honey badgers today, and I was telling you, the reason we did that back in the day was we were so sick of having uppers and lowers that were black anodized that were just like a little bit purple or shiny or not shiny. So so Ethan Lassard, engineer at AAC, and I were like, you know what, these guys are painting their guns with spray paint rattle cans anyway, so let's just make them just anodize them. You get the clear anodized, no dye. They'll be whatever color the material is underneath it, but the protection is there, and they'll paint it, and then everyone will be fine. And so when we brought that, I think it was AUSA 2010 or something like that, we showed that, and everyone was like, why? And no one was doing clear anodized. Yeah. Now, lots of companies are.
Lots of people, it's one of those things where, like, again, people sometimes they don't know what they need until they find out. And, it's when you look at something, and sometimes it might be like, oh, well, why isn't there a QD mount? It's like, well, why isn't there a QD mount? Like, there's a reason for that.
Sure.
Why is that reason? Do I actually need a QD mount?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't, know? So I think from the consumer aspect, is sometimes we got to look at products not just solely at that face value, but actually trying to figure out, like, why is it that way? Because there's a reason.
I think people, you judge things from what you know to be true already, and so when anything separates from the norm, it kind of throws a flag. And you're like, no, I don't. That doesn't make any sense to me. But like you said, if you really want to think about it or talk about it, there's typically some reasons why things are the way they are. And it's not just to be cool guy and look good on TV or whatever.
Like you said, it might not be for everyone. A lot of it comes down to, for who and for what. For that specific group that asked for it, it was, probably a game changer for them.
Yes.
Same thing if you're trying to pick out your first handguns. I can't tell you just to get a Glock 19.
Right.
It might not be for you. Yeah, it's for you. What are you going to use it for? What are you doing? Things like that. So again, just another thing that you got to think about when you're looking at products is absolutely, is this right for me?
Yeah.
So you kind of talked a little bit about your very first product,
right?
The ROF. Sorry.
No.
What would you say is your favorite product so far that you've designed? Like maybe the most challenging, or just like most fun, or like what would be your favorite?
It's hard to really pick one in particular out. I would say probably right now one I'm the most proud of is the AUS mount system. That we just awarded the contract for the new Hunter rifle for the UK MOD. They're doing 10,000 guns for a Ranger regiment.
Awesome. I mean, that's an awesome accomplishment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we and it's also, again, we don't want to talk about what we do for who we do it to the extent we can. And so it was the first time that something that we've been working on for a long time came to fruition, and the MOD said we want to celebrate this win. And so they were like, "Yeah, please talk about it."
That's cool.
Yeah. So, and they had it on display at DSEI, which is a defense show we were just at in September, where they signed all the contracts and whatnot. So it's very ceremonious. But yeah, people ask, well, why'd you get into the scope mounts in the first place? And again, it wasn't because I just wanted to make a scope. It was because these guys said, "Hey, look, you did a really good job on making this really slimline and snag free. We need a scope mount that has that same feature set. And can you make that?" So that's where the whole AUS thing started. And this was it's been 4 years or so, I think, maybe more. We've been working on this, and not specifically this gun per se. This is a more recent thing, but they needed a system where they knew they had a 13.7 inch barrel, and so that only gives you so much real estate on top of the gun.
Yeah.
They also needed a clip-on thermal, and they also needed a laser in front of that. And so that's the reason why the Eleanor optic from Vortex, it's a 1-10 that's shorter by, I want to say, a little over an inch. And that was because they needed to fit that thermal in between the laser and the scope. So because of that, they didn't have any more rail space for, say, like an offset like we've made here to get in the mix. And so that's why we came up with this system to plug in the side. Different we have levels, we have optic mounts for acros, Delta Pros. We'll be doing them for commercial market now, everyone's demanding for an RMR, so we'll do them for that, and the micros. But originally, that's why it was the two, because the Acro and the Delta Point Pro were the two contracted optics. And this whole system got its own NSN and is purchasable by anyone that uses the NSN system.
Nice.
And so, it's a very rare that you become part of a new firearm to that scale of a military. And we got a lot of flack when showed this, and we're proud about. We have a big UK flag at the office, and everyone's like, bootlickers and all that is like, they're our number one ally. And we cross train all the time. Our top tier military, that wouldn't exist without the top tier military groups that they've been patterned over in the UK. And so it's awesome to be able to be there. We were at the DSEI show, and having these guys, these young guys come up and be like, this is my new rifle. I'm so excited about it, So, that's probably the most meaningful.
I agree. I mean, you keep saying that it's a system, and I think that's just a very important aspect to really point out, is that it's not just a mount. Like you said, it has purpose all over it. You can change things out. You can add different red dots. Like you said, you've got levels. You can put the diving board on, and you can do what you got to do. It is a system that can solve a lot of problems. Again, some people don't realize that they are there. They're just like, we get stuck in the market of this is what we have and we're used to it, right? So like your QD socket, I was always used to the fact that, well, a QD is just going to be sitting flush, sticking up, and it's going to be a little bit hard to get out, And so we don't realize that, there is a better way. It's not just, it's just been done that same way. So, understanding you don't have to have everything up here making your gun real front heavy if you have the ability to run a system like this, and it works for your setting and what you're trying to do. Again, everything is problem solved. It's not just because, we can and it looks cool. It's that's a legit problem. So you grabbed the socket, so let's talk about that.
So the socket was another one that we were asked for. They wanted to be able to mount a sling attachment to the side of an M-lock rail, and they, like you said, hated that it stuck out 90 degrees. It spins up on you when you're moving around. And going back to my background in design, human factors and how you interact with these products, getting it at an angle that's actually going to be more like the angle that it's going to be hanging at, and then that angle also keeps the swivel from turning around on you, and just it's a simple little piece, and I put it together, and I thought it was just like, whatever that's done, we'll do something else that's really a big deal. And everyone keeps coming back, that socket, I love that socket, and we go, all right, cool. I'm glad everyone loves it, and
the little things sometimes that are just like the biggest little change. The little annoyances. You take all those annoyances away, and man, you just start living life a lot better.
Exactly. And if you want to talk about another thing we did is the torch here, and that was, group wanted. They were sick of. They needed a mounting solution. Surefire only was making a Picatinny rail attachment at that time for the scout lights, and so everyone was going M-lock, or Keyser, Q-mod rather, but not really as much. So it was M-lock that they had pretty much except for their HK stuff, and we need a situation where we can get our laser on top and our light as close to that as possible, and all that tucked down as close to the rail as possible, and we want to be rigid, and we don't want screws and plates and adapters and pieces coming loose. We're in helicopters, we're in water, we're all over the place, and so the torch exists now because of that, and they're expensive because it starts off as a big round piece of aluminum that we have to, because of the way it's manufactured, you have to manufacture a solid piece like that with a bore in the middle. It has to start out as a really big piece, right? So you're throwing away 80% of the metal in this thing, and people don't see that. And so it's that was a solution that we did for them. They love it. We did it as 3 volt, 6 volt, and then the new rechargeable stuff. And again, the people are like, I've got it on my gun, but it sticks way out. I want one that's sticks up close. And it's like, well, so that wasn't why we made it. We made it for a reason. We're having a laser on top, and
it was purpose built.
I realize that it does stick out a little bit more on a normal AR without a laser on top, which is a lot of the commercial market. But It's just I could have made another version that tucks up tight, but there's other solutions out there that other people are doing that kind of achieve that in a decent way, and they're whatever. That's not a problem I need to solve at this point. So I moved on to the next thing, and then
move on to the next problem to solve.
Yeah. Now this is another not this configuration, but this configuration here with the micro up top of an Elcan. That was for the Rangers. They were doing a daytime machine gun program, trying to get a red dot on top. And again, everyone's like, well, there's already a 1.5. I don't need a 1 in power up top. They're like, if you need to transition quick and you're a machine gunner, you don't need to sit there and try to flip a little lever on the side of your optic, right?
Yeah.
And then they're already, these dudes, they do make one, the Doctors, I think it was, that goes up top. But if you're on top of a big machine gun, 240, they just get knocked off all the time. They're not rigid enough. And so they went to a couple of companies in the industry that make mounts for optics. This is, and they said, no, we can't get a micro up on top of that. And so then they came to me, and Aimpoint came to us and were like, hey, look, can you do this? And anyone else says that can't be done. So I took a stab at it, and the reason they were struggling with it was the screw hole alignment with the knob on the side of the micro.
Oh yeah.
And so they're like, you can't get to the screw, so you can't mount it. I was like, why don't we just slide the micro forward? And so on the bottom here, we just did that, slide it forward so you can get that screw. I made two samples of both these configurations for the acro, or now the MPS, and the micro, and we sent them off, and they were evaluated, and eventually they went with the micro, mostly because they had a bunch of inventory already.
Right. Yeah.
And this was in the days of the P1 acro, which we all know is was lacking at the time, and was so difficult to get even at that. So they selected this. They sent it to Crane. It was certified and tested through Crane, and then we sold them to the Rangers for this daytime machine gun.
But again, it's innovation through problem solving.
Yeah, and again, we didn't think we'd ever sell them to the commercial market, and we did the run. We sold it. We had a couple extras. They sold out, and then it became this weird, like, are you ever gonna make them again? Like, if they ever order them again, we'll make them again. And
make some extra.
And then they just put another order in. So we did those, and I was like, look, if we're already making them, people had they'd seen the pictures of some of the prototypes, of the samples of the acro mount.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, I gotta have that. You gotta have that. So I was like, well, we'll just make that for the commercial market too, right? So that's another example of one of the few things that wasn't necessarily made just for a problem or a group that needed a thing. The original one was, but we made these for commercial.
I mean, you're taking a great product. Like, why not? If the Rangers are using it and they're benefiting in it, why not?
And it was already designed.
It's just pretty
much easy button.
Exactly, but again, like we keep saying, it purpose built. It wasn't just like, people might like this.
Right.
You're not worried about you are worried about the consumer. I want to say that, but that's not your first concern.
Right,
now,
right.
I got to solve this problem.
Yeah,
and then the market can figure out if it's also a problem for them or not.
Right. There's not many 240 machine guns in the commercial market.
Yeah. Luckily, we have one at our range.
Oh, nice.
Fun.
Yeah. Yeah. They are a good time. If you need one, I can send you.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. Anything else you?
So the big thing that I just wanted to get was for people to understand who you are,
sure.
Reptilia, why you do the things you do, and you did such a great job of explaining it. Like, there's a reason behind it all.
Yeah.
And another important feature, or another important thing to think about is like, so starting out, you're really well known for, stock and grip was kind of like what you were doing, right? And like you had mentioned before, like people are like, well, that's just looks like a BCM stock. Well, keep in mind, you spent a lot of time.
The Magpul,
Magpul stock is, keep in mind, you spent a lot of time with Magpul.
Sure, absolutely.
You're also not new to any of this. You've been doing this and designing this stuff, so people already have their hands on a lot of your stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And they already know the quality, they already know the design aspect, and so it was great to be able to sit down with you and actually be able to dive into this stuff, and hopefully people are walking away from this video better understanding why you're out there, what you do, and maybe it's not for them, but I bet you if they really looked at why you fixed that problem, they might be like, oh, okay, yeah, I could see that might actually be a benefit for me.
Sure, and like I said, you know, with the ROF 90 for the red dot up top, at first no one was on board with that, and now we sell tons of them because everyone wants it. LVPOs are super common, and everyone wants, you know, the different heights. So now we're doing the different heights and that and whatnot. But yeah,
you guys are coming out with, you have some more heights for.
Yeah, 170s we just launched those, and we're doing 193s next in 30 and 34 millimeter, as well as doing diving boards for that are more compatible with more optics for 30 and 34 millimeter. Those will be coming out in the next few months, and a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, it's exciting to see people getting on board with the stuff that, you know, maybe other folks were doing a couple of years ago. And things take time. People's perceptions take time. And you know, I'm happy to have these conversations and kind of talk through why things exist, why they needed to exist when they didn't. Kind of at the.
One last question would be, what is the biggest challenge that you and Reptilia kind of come across? What is the biggest thing that you guys have to deal with on a consistent level?
I mean, you know, we're passionate about making really good quality stuff. Again, making like this torch, for instance. That's not if you're an engineer that wants to be doing stuff for production, you look at that, you say that's outlandish. You do that, you weld it to, you know, and be done with it, or you put a plate on it and be done. And so a lot of our stuff is made in a way that is not the most economical way to make it, but it is the right way to make them. So, we have our price points are typically pretty high, but there's again reasons behind that, and I would say that's probably it. Fighting the market's perception about what things should cost. You know, like we're talking on the stock, we're selling a complete stock with a receiver extension that's got a big piece of aluminum in it that we had to open up stamping tooling that draws that out, you know, like in a military mil-spec rifle tube. And so you're buying a stock, but you're also buying a receiver extension, and all you have to do is put that on the back of a gun. Whereas if you're going to buy another carbine stock from another manufacturer, you know, you've got to buy a receiver extension, cast on that, you know, end plate, and then you've got to buy your stock and hope that the specs on those two all work together nicely and it doesn't rattle around on you. And so yeah, it's not just a carbine stock that you can throw on any receiver extension, but the reason for that was because they wanted it to be as slimline and snag-free as possible and as light as possible, and have that constant cheek weld up top. And that didn't exist in a package that was a lightweight or economically achievable. So we brought the Recce stock to market to fill that void, and the customer loved it. You know, it's got an NSN on it now, and it's been tested to their approvals. And so we get a little bit of flack because it's not as rigid as some other manufacturers' stock. It comes with cheek welds like UBR, but that wasn't the goal. That wasn't the objective of the program. And so again, things like this, having these conversations, really to try to tell people, like, look, this is why it exists. Does it work? Yes, it works. And is it different than what you might know to be true already from another product? Yes, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there's a reason. There's another important feature about that stock that I'd like you to point out.
The beard.
Yeah.
Yes. They were sick of getting their beards stuck in the receiver extension to stock while shooting, and so that was really one of the drivers of the constant cheek weld. So yeah, as both bearded men, we can appreciate that greatly.
Yep, like I said before, that was one of the first things I really noticed. Yeah. I mean, besides just how light it was, but when I was playing with it and I was shooting, I was like, oh, I'm used to like feeling, oh, that's beard here, that's gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. So it was funny when you originally told me that. I was like, yeah, dude, totally, that worked.
Yeah, 100%.
So again, another problem. Maybe you know, if you don't have a beard, it's not that big of a problem for you.
Not really a tactical problem, but it was
but you got to look good, play good.
Right,
you know?
Yeah. And how you interact with things. You want things to be enjoyable to interact with, right?
Definitely.
So,
Yeah, just like we're talking about little annoyances. It's just it's not the end of the world, but it's nice to not get your beard pulled all the time
Sure.
for shooting.
Sure. Yeah.
So, is there anything else that you want to let our viewers know, or anything about Reptilia or you yourself?
No, just, I mean, I appreciate everybody, and appreciate your time, and we'll keep making more stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, Eric.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Okay.